The Cubs going to Detroit. Nick Madrigal gets the job done after a quality, not quite a quality Javier Assad start because he only went 5 1/3, but it was a really good start. It's fair to say that. This is Cubs Baseball Channel. Mick Gillespie and Chuck Walter with you. Like, subscribe. Let's keep shooting this thing to the moon, baby. Mick, how we doing today?
Yeah, look, I was a little worried when, Fulmer was in there yesterday and you could tell he didn't have his best stuff. Javi Baez with a broken bat hit that turned out to be a really important hit in that game because it got the Tigers to within a run and then eventually led them to tie the game. But to see the Cubs come back and score that run immediately in the ninth and then get that second insurance run that turned out to be the difference kind of shows you where this team is right now. So I thought wasn't the way that you want it to go down, but you got the win, and that's all that matters. Winning games, as Gary Hughes once told me, in the big leagues is really tough.
Not only is it really tough, but you win the games like these, it doesn't matter whether it's 7-1 or whether it's 5-4 at the end of the day. I will say that some of the fans wish it was a little bit easier because it was an absolute roller coaster ride with that big lead in the eighth and blowing it. But the Cubs are in the playoffs. If the season ended today, they're only chasing Philadelphia in the wild card. You know that the wild card's been expanded to 3 teams, so they're smack dab in the middle right now with a game lead on Arizona, or a half game lead on Arizona, a game lead on Cincinnati and Miami, and then still chasing the Brewers in the National League Central. We've been saying all year it seems like Milwaukee at some point is going to fall off because the Cubs have like a plus 65 run differential. The Brewers are only at like plus 5. Their offense is not good whatsoever, but they just keep finding a way. Is Milwaukee the team every single year that you look at on paper and you say, they're not that impressive? They make it to the playoffs and then they just don't do anything. I mean, Milwaukee's been the same installment with Ryan Braun and Prince Fielder, with Jeremy Burnett and Richie Sexson. It feels like it's been the same franchise the way they're constructed for about 20 years. Make it to the playoffs, but they're doing nothing once they get there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're all in, you wouldn't have made the Josh Hader deal, last year that kind of left your clubhouse going, what the beep are we doing right now, but they find a way to win. Are they a team that scares you? No. I mean, because of exactly what you're talking about. Their offense isn't that good, but look, in baseball, you win with pitching and defense. That's what they're good at. They have developed some great starters through their system, guys that have come up and give them a chance to win every night. And then, to their credit, they find a way. I don't know how many times I've watched them play. They're in a close game. It's tied late and they end up winning, so you can't take that away from them. The Cubs just have to kind of bear down and do the things that they're doing right now. And that's just win the games on the schedule that are winnable and just hope that Milwaukee stumbles. Plus you have some games with the Brewers coming up.
Julian Merriweather was unavailable to pitch yesterday. Adbert Alzolay unavailable to pitch yesterday. So the fact that the Cubs got it done was pretty gritty. They bring in Michael Fulmer. Did David Ross bring in Michael Fulmer at the right time? Did he leave him in too long? Now, Fulmer had a horrible start to the season, and some people remember that. But the reason the Cubs got back into the mix, not solely due, but it was helped out by the fact that Michael Fulmer through the late stretch of July into early August, when 8 of his 9 outings didn't give up a single run. It's been bad since then. And his last 6 innings has given up 6 runs. Did Rossi leave Fulmer in too long?
Well, I mean, it's a tough question to answer because you just kind of touched on it. The fact that you didn't have your, kind of your A bullpen available. And, so you're really hoping that Fulmer can get you through an inning, and he couldn't. I mean, a third of an inning, and blew it. But give the rest of the guys a lot of credit for coming in and hammering it down and getting some really tough outs, including Leiter, who did give up a run in the ninth, but got the save. And I don't know. I was watching, and it was obvious to me pretty early he was struggling and that he was about to blow it. But then I'm thinking to myself, who else do you have available that you feel confident in. And, maybe he gets a ground ball double play and you get out of it. But, yeah, he just wasn't good yesterday. And that's kind of the debate that I've had, not knowing who they could have put in to that spot or who he felt like he had available. But I mean, look, Fulmer just didn't have it. And you could tell after the second batter.
Rossi picked up the phone and said, bring in Palencia. Daniel Palencia comes in, gets the 2 outs with 2 runners on. That's gutsy. That's deserving of a little golf clap. So Palencia keeps the score at, 5-5 at that point. We go to the top of the 9th inning. Yan Gomes gets it started with a double. And then the Tiger King, Nick Madrigal, who's hitting over 400 in his career against the Detroit Tigers, has 6 RBI and 30 at-bats against Detroit because obviously he spent some time with the Chicago White Sox, which brings up the question I have about Madrigal. Do you keep riding the hot hand? When a player is hot consistently against a team throughout his entire career, do you ride the analytics there and say we're playing him all 3 games in this series?
Maybe. I like Madrigal. I saw him come up through the White Sox farm system, and when he was in Double-A, you couldn't get the ball by him. I mean, he just made contact on everything, and his at-bats looked a lot like what we saw in the 9th inning. He's like, hey, I'm just trying to move the runner, and he ends up with a double. When you put the ball in play, good things happen. And in this day and age where everyone strikes out all of the time, it's good to have a guy who doesn't strike out a lot. This generation's Joe Sewell gets the bat on the ball every time. So, if he's having success against the Tigers, I don't know why you wouldn't play him, find a spot for him in there. I don't think it's an accident that he's the guy that came through with the big hit. And honestly, even taking a look at the White Sox game when he had the home run that set the Cubs up for that dramatic Christopher Morel winner, he's been pretty clutch here lately.
Some of these names that you pull out, Mick, I always go to the well in the steroid era or a decade ago, whatever it is. You always are going back to like the 80s, the 70s, and like even well before your time, you're going back for comps. You're like, yeah, he's the Cal Ripken Sr. You're not even throwing out Junior.
I knew Cal Sr.
You're throwing out Cal Ripken Sr. Javier Assad,
was there before Cal Sr. You're talking about like last turn of the century guy. But I think one season Sewell went with 5 strikeouts the entire time. So I'm not saying that he's exactly like Sewell, but that's who he reminded me of when he was coming up because he was just able to hit the ball.
Who does Javier Assad remind you of right now? He's had 5 starts in his big league career. Every single one has given up less than 2 runs. You'd love to see him go, a quality start almost every time out there. He didn't yesterday because he gave up the back-to-back home runs. But aside from that, 2 solo shots. Javier Assad, once again, flawless. The numbers aren't anything crazy, but if you can get 5 innings, 1 earned run, 2 earned runs from Javier Assad every single time he goes out there, it's much better than what the Cubs have gotten from their 4 or 5 starters the rest of the season.
Pitch to contact. He's not trying to overpower everyone. He'll get some strikeouts. This is how baseball used to be played. And what happened was the analytics guys came in and they're like, hey, if you strike everybody out, then they can't do anything. And it's like, yeah, that's true. A lot of the strikeout guys are using max effort just to try to get the ball over the plate, so now we got to use more of a bullpen.
You know what the strikeout guys are like? It's the Cole Reagans the other day from Kansas City. Yes, they can strike out 10, 11 batters. They can also throw it over the backstop into the crowd and hit a peanut vendor. So
right. Well, look, when you get into the postseason, it's maybe you want to have the strikeout guys. That's it works better in the playoffs. But when you're running a marathon, having the pitch to contact guys are great. Greg Maddux, having a guy like that's great. You don't always have to strike everyone out, and there's a good mix. Kyle Hendricks, perfect example of that. That you don't have to strike everyone out and overpower everyone to have a great start. And this is a guy who the Cubs developed through their system. And they actually let him pitch. You were talking about Jordan Wicks yesterday, where he's like throwing 4 innings. Javier Assad, I saw him throw 6 innings a lot and some 7-inning starts, and that's why I'm so big on that. I want to see a guy who can who can get through the lineup the third time. And this guy's done nothing but continue to prove his doubters wrong. And yesterday was a great example of that. So I'm excited about having him in the rotation. I think the players like playing behind a guy who throws strikes and pitches to contact as well. I'm not saying pitch to hard contact. I'm saying ground balls. Get some soft fly balls. Let's get some pop-ups. Let's move this game along. And to strike out someone, you need at least 3 pitches. Pitch to contact outs, you might do it on 1.
Is he a big league starter long term?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's proving that right now. Is he, your opening day starter? Probably not, but you love having him in the 4 or 5 spot in the rotation.
All right, Seiya Suzuki, talk about a hitter right now that's hitting 7 or 8 consistently, and 6, 7 or 8, but typically 7 or 8, and is on fire right now. He's already got 5 of his 13 home runs in the month of August. We're only 23 days in. Back-to-back days with a long fly. We put out the banner yesterday from Midway's MLB Slugfest, which is one of the greatest video games of all time. If you've never fired that up on your Nintendo GameCube, it's like the NFL Blitz, or the baseball version of NFL Blitz. You get them with the clown heads and everything like that. NHL Hits was another
Stuff
game.
You like.
Yeah, it was a great game, and we had Suzuki on there. Photoshopped him over Derek Lee. Had to get 2 right-handed hitters. But 5 of his 13 home runs this month, man. What do you say? What do you say with Suzuki right now? It seems like he got a little mental reset after the quote-unquote benching, and he's ready for the stretch run. Cubs need this bad.
Trivia, his first home run as a Cub in spring training. I'm on the call for it with Ron Coomer, who I've invited on the channel, and I'm guessing that we'll talk to him really soon. I say, which, of course, what do you say is partly my catchphrase, that this guy's really locked in, that having a couple of days off helped him mentally. He's motivated. You can tell he's having fun. Cubs with Suzuki sliding into that, I said it yesterday, that 3-headed monster of Bellinger and Dansby, and then Seiya. You get Seiya as that third guy to deliver like he did yesterday, like he's been delivering, and now all of a sudden the Cubs become way more formidable. It's exciting. They paid for this. That doesn't always mean that it transpires. But I told you when he was struggling, I wasn't giving up on him. It's just, this is a really tough league. And when you come over from Japan, there's adjustments that need to be made. But what we know is that you can come over from Japan and figure this thing out. Baseball's best player is Japanese, Shohei Ohtani. So Suzuki was one of the best players there. And the last week, he's been one of the best players here.
Wilson Contreras leaves the Cubs this offseason. A lot of Cubs fans were disappointed that they let him go, but Yan Gomes came in to be a little bit of a stop plug. He's not a long-term solution at 36 years of age. They had the 3-headed monster with Amaya, Tucker Barnhart in there as well, but it's seemingly clear that Yan Gomes is your playoff catcher moving forward, at least for the majority of games. What have you seen from Yan Gomes? I mean, he's been a great player for a long time. Has he exceeded all your expectations?
Met him at the University of Tennessee baseball banquet a couple of off seasons ago. Love him. He's just a great guy. You can imagine playing for Yan Gomes or with Yan Gomes. Maybe there's a future for him after he gets finished playing as, a manager or a coach. Just brings a lot of positive energy and fun. So I think that's part of it. And then he's great behind the plate. He's that veteran presence that David Ross was for the Cubs in 2016. So I've enjoyed watching him too. And as you develop, young catchers, which is something that the Cubs are doing right now, he's really good for that as well. And they obviously feel comfortable enough to get rid of Tucker Barnhart, who, had 2 years left on his deal. Well, another year on his deal after this, because of Yan Gomes and then we'll see. But I like him.
And let's not forget that when they had that open clubhouse meeting after the San Francisco Giants series, and it just seemed like the season was going down the toilet. They called on Dansby Swanson, and they called on Yan Gomes, two guys that had World Series experience. Yan Gomes won one with the Washington Nationals, and he was all about the fight and maybe the rah-rah. I would love to be a fly in the clubhouse, but it's clear that he's a leader of some regard there. So
right.
That's
and
the show today, Mick.
Well, let me say this. Miguel Amaya is getting a great education right now of what it takes to be successful in the big leagues from Yan Gomes.
All right, the 4 finalists, we teased it to today. Mick's got to run. He's got to do a radio show, so we're going to push it back one day. Anyways, if you did not watch yesterday's show, watch the whole thing, or you could skip ahead to about the 18-minute mark where I reveal the 4 finalists. You can see if you were one of the 4 finalists if you commented on the video that we told you to a week back or so. And, of course, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. Let's keep this thing going. Cubs right now in the playoffs if the season ended today, still chasing the Milwaukee Brewers who keep on winning these baseball games, but the vibes are immaculate surrounding the Cubbies right now. They blow games and they find a way to get it done.
That's me jinxing the Brewers.